Hey there, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making some tasty home-cooked food. All of this was made at home, including my bread and my pizza dough. So I hope you enjoyed today's video and get some inspiration out of it, but let's go ahead and get started and I will show you what I made. First up today, we're going to make these easy pizza roll-ups. I started by preheating my oven to 400 degrees, and then over into a large mixing bowl, I'm adding in 2/3 cup of warm water along with 2 1/4 teaspoons of instant yeast. I gave that a little mix just to start, and then I added in about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Again, just gave that another little mix together. Then I'm adding in 1½ cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of oregano. Then I'm just adding on my hook to my mixer, and I'm going to let this mix on a low speed until it all starts to come together. If it's sticking in the bottom like that, you'll just need to add a little bit more flour, but you don't want to add a lot, not even 1/4 of a cup, just very little until it's all coming together and kind of sticking in a ball like this. If you add too much flour, the dough is not going to turn out right. You want it to be still just a tad sticky, but not so sticky that it sticks to your hands. I sprayed the bottom of my bowl with some nonstick spray, and I left that little ball of dough down in there to rise until it doubled in size for about 40 to 45 minutes. Here's what it looked like after that time went by. I went ahead and just pushed it down in the center. I did flour my countertop with just a little bit more flour. Again, you do not want to overdo it with the flour. Added my dough onto the countertop and then rolled it out into a nice flat rectangle. You will want to get it as close as you possibly can to a rectangular shape, just because when you are rolling this up, it's going to make your life a lot easier when everything is all even. So once it is rolled out, I am now going to take some pizza sauce. Just add in a little bit of sauce. You can save the rest of the sauce for dipping. Next, I took a handful of pepperonis and I just sliced those into thin strips. Along the edges, you're going to want to leave about 1 inch of space from the sauce, the pepperoni, and the cheese that we're about to put on. So make sure you try to keep those edges clean. Next, you'll just take some shredded mozzarella cheese and add that on. I'd say I probably added about 1 cup to 1.25 cups of mozzarella. And once everything is on there, you're just going to roll this up. Try to keep it as tight as you can and as even as you can and roll it all the way up. I did take the ends and kind of fold those under and press them together, that way they would seal. Along with the back side, I just rolled it over and pinched the seam all together. I went ahead and transferred this over to my cutting board, and using a nice sharp knife, I'm going to cut this into about 1-inch sections. When you get to the end pieces, it's going to be like a ball of dough. You can just go ahead and discard that or use it for something else. And then I'm going to move these over to a baking sheet. I did line it with some parchment paper so they would not stick to the bottom when the cheese melts. And when I move them over here, I like to kind of take my fingers and round them out a little bit. That way they are actually a circle and not an oval shape. These are going into my oven to bake for around 15 minutes. You just want to make sure the center dough is completely cooked. This is what they will look like when they come out of the oven. You'll just want to let them sit for about 5 minutes and then they are ready to eat. Here is what my plate looked like in the end. We ended up having a little bit of salad with this night, but this is what the little pizza rolls looked like. They turned out so good. I was very proud of this dough. It was very flavorful, and I did save some of that pizza sauce like I said earlier so we could dip these in there, and that was really good. Next up, we are making this sausage and squash orzo. This was a new one for me that my friend sent to me, and I loved it so much. I started by preheating my oven to 400 degrees, and then over to my cutting board I have one butternut squash. I am just peeling the skin off of this, and then we're going to take that and clean out that bottom half of all the seeds. Now I am just going to go ahead and cut this into little bite-sized cubes. Once this was all cut up, it ended up being about a pound of butternut squash. As I cut this up, I went ahead and just added it into my bowl so it would be easier for mixing. I'm going to cover this with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then for my seasonings, I added about a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of thyme. When this is all done, you can adjust any of those seasonings, so don't worry if you like things to be a little bit more seasoned, you can always add that later. I gave that a good mix together and then set it aside for just a moment while I prepared my baking sheet. I just added a piece of parchment paper to it. I was just about out, so it's a little bit small for my baking sheet, but it still worked. I spread those out as evenly as I could, trying to make sure that they were not layered on top of each other. I stuck this in my oven for about 30 minutes, and I did take it out halfway through to kind of move them around a little bit and then put it back in the oven. While that is cooking in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and slice up this turkey smoked sausage. You do not have to use turkey, I just like to use turkey. You can use any type of smoked sausage you prefer. I cut that in half, and then I sliced each one of those in half as well. And then I just cut those into little half moons. Once those were all cut up, I went ahead and just transferred them all over into a nice big pot on my stove. If you have olive oil, I would add just a little bit of olive oil in here, but I was also out of my olive oil, so I went ahead and just cooked them straight in here and browned them up like this. Once you notice they have some color on them, you can go ahead and add in 2 cups of water and 1 cup of orzo. I did just use my spoon to kind of scrape the bottom to pick up any flavor that was on the bottom of the pan, and you're just going to want to let this come to a boil. Once boiling, add a lid and let this continue cooking until all the liquid has been absorbed by the orzo. At this point, if your orzo is still hard, you can add in a little bit more water. I would just start with 1/4 cup and go from there. But once your orzo is completely cooked through, you can go ahead and add in 1/4 cup of frozen spinach. If you don't want to use frozen, please use fresh. I just like to keep the frozen in the freezer. It's so much easier for me not to be wasteful. I can just add it into recipes just like this. So if you want to use fresh, you totally can, but I am using frozen. You're also going to add in 1 can of drained and rinsed black beans. And I just added the lid so that spinach could cook through. And then finally, we're going to add some more seasonings. I added just a little bit more pepper, but you don't want to overdo it, so just a few shakes. A 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then I gave this a mix together. And by this point, your butternut squash should be done. For the butternut squash, you just want to make sure that it is fork tender, and once it's fork tender, you can go ahead and add it right into your pot. Give this another good mix together to combine that butternut squash, and your meal is ready to go. This is what it should look like. And here is my finished bowl of food. After taking this video, I actually sprinkled some Parmesan cheese on top of this, and let me tell you, that really makes this meal. It is so good all together. I ended up eating all of this in a span of 2 days because I just could not get enough of it. I've really been on a butternut squash kick lately, so this was fantastic. And last but not least, today we're going to make some chicken cheesesteak sandwiches. I started by preheating my oven to 375, and then over to my cutting board I went ahead and sliced up 1 yellow onion, half of a green bell pepper, and half of a red bell pepper. I also sliced 1 chicken breast in half as well, and I lightly seasoned it on both sides with some garlic powder, salt, pepper, and onion powder. Over into my cast iron skillet, I am just adding about a tablespoon of butter and a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil. I'm going to let that all heat up in there together and then add my chicken in. I cooked it for about 3 minutes on each side until it was browned and fully cooked all the way through. Once it was done, I just removed it over to my cutting board so that it could sit for a few minutes while I cooked my peppers and onions. I added those straight into the same skillet. I did not add any extra oil or anything. There was plenty from before. I did season my peppers and onions with a few shakes of salt and pepper, a half teaspoon of garlic powder, a half teaspoon of onion powder, and 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. I went ahead and mixed that together and let that cook for about 7 to 8 minutes until everything was nice and fork tender. Once that was done, I added my chicken in. As you can see, I went ahead and just sliced that chicken up into little strips. I gave everything one more mix to combine, and then over on a baking sheet, as you can see, I have these little buns here. I actually made these homemade and they turned out so good. I will link the recipe below for you if you are interested in it. I'm just taking that chicken and pepper mixture and adding it into each one of my buns. Then I'm taking some provolone cheese and just adding that over the top. I stuck this in the oven for about 5 to 7 minutes until the cheese was melted and the bread was lightly toasted, but this is what it looked like when it was coming out of the oven. And then here is my finished plate. These sandwiches were amazing. I was so pleased with this bread. Like I said, I'll link it below for you if you're interested in making your own at-home buns. And then this chicken cheesesteak filling was just so flavorful, and also these were really filling. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I really truly appreciate your time. If you did make it all the way to the end of this video, don't forget to leave me a flower down in the comments below, and I will see you guys back here on Wednesday for a new video. Bye!